Go.
Okay, wonderful. And the reason we do that is we do a YouTube after the meeting, and people can then, if they can't make the meeting, they can see it. And we often get a lot of people who do watch the YouTube video afterwards. Rita is now our videographer. Zane, who helped us for quite a few years, is moving on. He's a young man and he's moving on. So congratulations to him. We'll miss him, but we wish him well. He's 20 years old and moving on. All right, let me do a quick introduction here, and then I'm going to read a quick biography of our both of our speakers, who are amazing. So what we're doing tonight is we're going to welcome Dr. Justin Irish, the superintendent of Anacortes Schools, and Mr. Daniel Williams, who's our high school principal. They'll be giving us an update on enhancing the Anacortes School District strategic plan for the 2022 to 2027 school years, as well as an update about this year's annual plan. They'll discuss how the schools are working to support all learners, for example, with advanced courses, learning English language, special ed, education, and students experiencing poverty. The misinformation about critical race theory and comprehensive sexual health will be addressed. And in addition, there'll be a COVID-19 update. And at the end, we will have questions. The other thing I'd like to do is read a little bio of both of these speakers, which is incredibly impressive. We are very, very lucky in this community to have two people like this who want to come to a small town and do what they do. So Dr. Justin Irish began serving the Anacortes School District as superintendent on July 1st, 2020. He has a bachelor's degree and doctorate from the University of Washington and earned his master's degree in teaching from Seattle University. He grew up in the Pacific Northwest and is excited to now call Anacortes home. He and his husband, Kenny, live in Anacortes with their two cats. They have enjoyed getting to know their neighbors and the community, as well as the many parks, trails, and recreation spots in the area. Dr. Irish is committed to continuing the legacy of high student achievement and excellence across our school. Dr. Irish leads the day-to-day operations of the school district. It's approximately 400 employees and manages the $40 million budget. And Mr. Williams, Daniel Williams, began serving the Anacortes High School as principal on July 1st, 2021. He has a BA, Bachelor's of Art, in the Corporate Communication and Justice Studies from New York University, and 2 master's degrees. One in Evaluation and Measurement from the Western Governors University, and one in Public School Building Organization and Leadership from Columbia University. Mr. Williams will lead a staff of approximately 80 certified and classified employees and a student body of 700 students. He serves on the district's leadership team and helps guide the district's focus on equitable outcomes for all students, as well as the academic and extracurricular and social and emotional learning programs at the high school. Again, we are very lucky to have 2 such qualified people in our district. Thank you both and for doing all that you do, and also thank you both for being here. So I am now going to be quiet and turn it over to the reason we've come, and that is to hear from Dr. Irish and Mr. Williams.
Excellent. Thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate being here today. It's wonderful to scroll through all the attendees and to recognize some of the faces here. Thank you for being here. It's great to see friendly faces, and it's great to have opportunities to meet new faces and friends. So thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go through a presentation. Oh, I am unable to share my screen. So if the host could give me access, that would be great. While someone is giving me access, I guess I'll begin by.
Good to go now, Justin.
Oh, fantastic. All right. All right. Oops, just a second here. For some reason, my slide is not showing. One moment.
We're seeing it on our second screens here. It's not in full screen yet, but
Okay.
we're seeing it.
All right, here we go. Okay. I could not find the share screen, so there we go. All right, well, thank you again. Actually, Barbara, thank you for introducing us, and I don't need to spend a lot more time on that. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I do want to share that Mr. Williams is here with us today as well. He has another engagement that he needs to attend to also at the end of this. So he's going to share a little bit, and then he can go on to his next meeting as well. Really allow some time for questions and answers for Mr. Williams. And then I will be here for the end of the presentation and the questions as well. So I'll start off with just a quick context here. So I started last year. I was hired in February of last year and had no idea that I was going to be a new superintendent in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, let alone move to a new community of which I did not know anyone, and have to be managing a healthcare crisis while trying to build relationships and trust with our community. I had a counselor in one of our schools say to us one time during one of our planning meetings last year that planning for instruction and planning for the needs of our students and community is like a jigsaw puzzle together during a hurricane. That's how it's been for us as we've tried to navigate this worldwide pandemic and understand how this pandemic has impacted our schools, from everything from our finances to operations to enrollment to students' social emotional needs to staff social emotional needs, and also now even more so the political divide that we have in our nation and some of the rhetoric that is being shared across not only our national platforms, but here in Anacortes as well. So I'll share some of those complexities as well and try to set some records straight. Just to give you a little perspective of our vision and mission. So our vision is that our students rise to their fullest potential, that they embrace the future and they make a difference. This vision was created in 2017 prior to my arrival, and is still alive and committed. The board is still committed and the community is still committed to this vision. The mission is that we inspire each student every day with quality instruction that promotes creativity, growth, character, individual strengths, and a lifelong love of learning. We serve about 2,500 kids. Up or down, depending on the year. We have about 400 staff. That's our certificated teachers and administrators, as well as our classified staff, which is all of our staff who manage the operations and or instructional supports across our organization. We have 7 schools in our district, 3 elementary schools, 1 middle, 1 high school, 1 alternative high school, and then an early childhood education center. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Williams to just start us off, since he's here. A little bit of information about the high school, and he can certainly share a little bit about his transition into Anacortes and into the Anacortes High School, as well as some updates around his vision and work as he's been here now just for a few months, actually. He started July 1st and very, very, very happy that he is here with us. So Mr. Williams, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Arch, and good evening, everyone. You know, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and I'm here to tell you, y'all go grow some amazing apples. And that's a direct reflection of the incredible love and care that you pour into your scholars each and every day. And I see that here in their presence. I see that here in their vibrancy and the life that they bring, not only this school community, but the Anacortes community at large. And so with that, what you see here is a reflection of several things. The first thing that I'm going to call your attention to is the student data on your screen. That data is reflective of where we were approximately 2 years ago as a school community. And as you see in the areas of math and science, the numbers were not where we would want them to be. In ELA, one of the things that this particular metric doesn't show is that for our at-risk populations, those being our scholars with disabilities, our economically disadvantaged scholars, and our Ls, they're scoring disproportionately lower than their peers. And so this is definitely something, or should I say an area of work that is a major area of focus for me and our school community this year. But I also want to speak to another area of work that we're focused on this year, and that's increasing our sense of, or our scholars' sense of belonging. So in order for us to be able to speak to academic achievement, we also have to speak to feelings of emotional and mental safety within our community. And I submit to you that that's inextricably linked to scholars' sense of how and whether or not they feel as if they belong. I plan on doing that by working to increase scholar voice and choice within the high school. But we also, as a collective, intend on speaking to that aim by increasing student achievement and student achievement of all scholars across all subgroups. Let me speak to you about what form has taken up to now. So one of the things that I just spoke to you about was our at-risk populations. Understand where they were pre-COVID, and definitely understanding and appreciating that those groups likely were disproportionately negatively impacted by the impacts of learning loss associated with the pandemic. We wanted to provide these scholars the most robust supports possible. And so effective now, every scholar with disabilities, every economically disadvantaged scholar, and every English language learner within our school community has access to 24/7 tutoring online. So whether or not 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning, our scholars are not engaging in unproductive struggle. Struggle is indeed a part of the learning process. But in order for it to be meaningful or productive in some way, we want them to be productively struggling, productively grappling with something. And so this was a measure, a tool that we wanted to employ to ensure that no scholar was unproductively struggling, meaning that they couldn't get past a misconception or misunderstanding without help. Another area, the introduction of peer tutoring. So in addition to those supports for our most at-risk scholars, we also know that there are a number of scholars that struggle in the area of math. And so within that, we have employed peer tutoring across both lunches, Tuesday through Thursday within our school community. And also, to measure the effectiveness of these interventions and also the health of our instructional programming. One of the things that we've also implemented this year was testing that not only gave us a starting point as to where our scholars are coming in at, but assessment that measures their growth over time. We'll be testing scholars 3 times in the areas of reading and language usage in grades 9 and 10, and also every scholar who's enrolled in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry through something called a MAP assessment, measures of academic progress. And as I shared with you just a moment ago, that's not just going to give us a snapshot in time. That's going to tell us about where our scholars are when they came into this year, but also how they're doing as they progress throughout the year. They'll be tested. We're just completing beginning of year testing. They'll also undergo middle of year testing and end of year testing as well. And again, that's to inform us, one, who's struggling and how can we best provide them the supports that they need, but also to speak to the health of our instructional program. And I think I should leave it there. I'm sure Dr. Irish, you have a lot more to share, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but thank you all so much for your time this evening. It's a pleasure being here with you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. So before I move on, the rest of the presentation is going to talk more about the district level efforts to improve in our strategic plan, as well as our district-wide efforts around race, and equity, as well as our addressing some of the misconceptions. So before we move into those areas, are there any questions that people have for Mr. Williams before he has to leave us this afternoon? And I'm going to have a hard time seeing raised hands with my screen shared. So if people want to just maybe speak out instead of raising your hand, that might be helpful.
Okay. There's one thing in the chat. At what level does world language instruction start in Anacortes?
So that's a great question. So the answer to that is that it varies. It can start in freshman year. And there are some scholars that did receive a level of foreign language this year. However, because of our increased student numbers, most scholars started at their sophomore year forward in a world language this year.
Okay.
I have a question to ask, if I may. Thanks, Mr. Williams. I appreciate your giving an explanation of all the interventions you plan to do and how you'll be measuring student achievement and those improvements. And I wanted to go back to your goal of improving or increasing the sense of belonging of students at the high school, and whether you have particular indicators you'll use to measure whether that sense of belonging is increasing or not. What is it you're looking for to see if that's happening?
That's a great question. And I hope in all of my academic speak just a moment ago, I may have been remiss in saying one thing. I feel like a scholar's sense of belonging is also tied to how successful they feel within a community. And so that's a really big piece. And so one major aspect of that is speaking to their academic success. When scholars feel as if they're successful in their environment, they're going to want to be here more and want to engage more. That's the first piece. Another part of that deals with our co-curricular and extracurricular programming. Scholars have been at home, lots away, largely for about 2 years now. And we know that we need to anchor them in their desire to be here in something more than books and computer screens. And so you'll see that spoken to in the depth and breadth of programming that we offer, both in the extracurricular and co-curricular. We've hosted a school clubs fair already this year, and that will be an annual occurrence. And so all scholars had an opportunity to liaise with leaders with every school group that we offer here, from academic to athletic. Also, you'll see that you just recently saw it in homecoming programming. And so our ASB group and our student government led all aspects of not only the homecoming dance and game you saw, but a whole month of activities. In fact, it was their choice to take something that's typically and historically been a week's worth of programming and extend it to a month. And what you saw in that was an ability to bring about the desires and interest of a multitude of student groups. And so we're not just talking about the athletes and their celebration of athleticism. We're also talking about the gamers that came with us to game night. We're also talking about the people that love to play games outside of videos and sports. You saw that with Jenga and the giant Jenga blocks. I can't tell you how many events we had. There's so many, because it was a month of programming. And so I talked about increasing scholar voice and choice. It's also about leadership and affording them the leadership to bring that scholar voice and choice to in our school community. And that's what you saw with our homecoming programming. We also will continue to employ surveys that take the pulse periodically of our scholars to get a sense of where they are and how included, safe, and heard they feel within our school community. And so those are several methods that I'd say we're trying to employ to speak to the aim that you just inquired about.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Um, this has been a tumultuous year in so many ways, given COVID, the adjustment of having a wonderful new superintendent, all of the changes and iterations of trying to keep students safe. How has that been for you coming in as the principal, a new principal here, and also in the middle of all of this, trying to acclimate and to a new environment? What can we do to add to your success, and how can we assist you?
So thank you so much for that question. I heard two questions. One about safety. Here, I definitely have to give props to our district leadership team and Dr. Irish. Being new to Anacortes and also new to the school system, one of the things that I'm exceptionally thankful for is the extraordinary level of support and coordination that was afforded not only to myself, but all school leaders in respect to COVID and the protocols, the innumerable protocols and rules and regulations surrounding it. And so and I can't tell you how beneficial and helpful that was being new. I didn't have to second guess anything because everything was explicitly spelled out by and from the district office. In terms of, and one of the things you all may or may not know about my personal story and background is that I'm coming from New York. And so New York is a very, very, how I want to say this nicely. It's a very charged living environment. There's a lot going on at all times. And safety is always at an extreme high, right? And so coming to a community that isn't so extreme in its landscape, I still have with me that New York high in wanting to speak to issues of safety at all times. And so one of the things that I do here in the building, that's in addition to the supports offered by the district office and through Dr. Irish, is on a weekly basis, we have weekly safety meetings, and we're talking about every single aspect of safety within our school community, speaking to any potential challenge of safety within our school community, so we can be proactive as opposed to reactive to situations as they unfold. And so that's the piece on safety. In terms of success, I greatly appreciate the hospitality and welcome and advice that I received from so many within the school community and within the Anacortes community. What I would ask for that I believe could definitely speak to my success and also our school community success this year would be feedback. Your feedback is invaluable. I love and appreciate greatly hearing how you think that we're doing and how we can improve. And the more I have that, the more we can take action as a collective here. And so I would say continue to give feedback and also continue to engage with us here during our community events. We have coffee with the principals tomorrow. That invite has been shared out via all the scholars that are here. I also can make that link available to the organizer of tonight's event. But I would say continue to engage with us and also continue to share with us feedback as to how we're doing so we can consistently grow and work toward improvement.
There's a couple of chat questions I'll read to you. One is from Shay. How are you addressing post-secondary educational opportunities and success for our high school graduates?
Okay, that's a great question. And the landscape of post-secondary options and have changed a lot since the advent of COVID. One of the things that we have began this year, and one of the things that I wanted to bring to the high school that I'm thankful to have been able to do was, you have to, there's a saying, like if you're always ready, you never have to get ready. I don't know if you've heard it. If you're always ready, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready. And so in respect to college going assessments, for instance, we know that the SAT and the ACT are heavily weighted portions of college applications. And so to speak to that reality, one of the things that we've done in addition to hosting the PSAT is bring also the pre-ACT to our suite of college going testing assessments. The PSAT and the pre-SAT, by making those available to scholars early on, it allows scholars to do two things. One, determine which assessment, whether or not it be the SAT ultimately or the ACT, is best for them. Humanities scholars, those that love the humanities are really good in the humanities, tend to fare better in the ACT. Those that are in the STEM areas or love the STEM areas tend to fare better in the SAT. But either way, we want scholars to know what college going assessment is best for them and how successful they would likely be if they took that assessment tomorrow or next month. And so we're making pre-ACT a part of our college going assessments to give scholars an opportunity to see how they fare on both tests, not just one. Also, Zello programming with our counseling team. Our counseling team is phenomenal. They do regular programming around not just high school planning, but planning for college and beyond. And so what you see in our advisory curriculum, for instance, is regular programming where scholars are not just researching options associated with academics, but also occupations and learning what colleges best align to those occupations. Also exploring options outside of just a traditional 4-year for scholars that are more interested in 2-year institutions and vocational institutions. And also one of the things that I want to say that we are doing more of this year is meeting with scholars to the extent that we can on an individual basis. It's funny that that question came about because I had a college admissions session with a scholar this afternoon. If the scholar asked me about college, I'm going to ask them to sit down with me and let's talk it through. That's something I take very, very seriously with my role, because our role isn't just to help them get through 4 years of college. Our role is to give scholars a foundation on which they can successfully stand in the negotiation and navigation of post-secondary learning and in life. And so there's a host of other measures that we have here, but I hope that that preview spoke to the heart of your question.
There's one other question. How many student assemblies are offered per month or per school year? Do they disrupt the final exam schedule for at the end of the semesters?
I laugh because if you knew our practitioners, you would know they're very serious about their instructional time. Our practitioners are an amazing group and an extraordinarily decorated group. We have one of the most decorated faculties in the country. I can't tell you how many nationally board certified teachers are on staff with us. There's a running joke that on our English faculty, for instance, though the one faculty member that isn't nationally board certified is an author, a published author. I said that to say that our practitioners are extraordinarily guarded about instructional time. And as a result, our programming regarding assemblies and anything that is outside of instruction is very, very well planned and coordinated amongst the leadership team so as to not at all interfere with or very minimally interfere with instructional time. And by contract, we are limited to 3 school-wide assemblies annually. So going back to your initial question, instructional time is very sacred here at the high school and is definitely touched as minimally as possible.
Okay, I'm having a little trouble seeing, people raise their hands. Are there any other questions that people have for Mr. Williams? Because he does have to get going, so. All right. Well, looks like that's it. I'm sure that if people do have questions or concerns, they can contact you at the high school. And I want to thank you so very much for coming and giving us your time and energy. And thank you for all you're doing at the high school. It's really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cooper. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being with you. this evening. And as Ms. Cooper just shared, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or concerns to me. I hope y'all have a great evening.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. It was great to see you, and good luck at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. As you can see, we have an incredible principal here, and I'm excited that he is with us, and he's bringing a lot of energy and love to this organization. So very grateful for Mr. Williams. So I'm going to continue just to give a little bit more updates about the district. Some quick stats that are kind of interesting for you all to think about is that we have about 227 on a typical year. Now this is typical year when everything is pre-COVID. But we have about 227,000 miles driven in the school year. We serve about 6,000 gallons of milk, about 194,000 meals served. We have about 500 square feet of buildings to maintain, and we have 42 acres of ground to cover. So that just gives you a little perspective of what we do in a typical year. Now imagine throwing COVID into that. So just imagine all the protocols and mitigation strategies and everything we need to do to make sure our kids get on that bus, that they get to school, that they're physically safe, that we serve our meals, that we maintain these grounds, and that we supervise and manage all of those buildings. So I wanted to go into our next cycle. Our strategic plan expires at the end of this year. This plan was created by the former superintendent and by the school board with support from staff and community. And the board is committed to maintain this strategic plan, the large big picture goals of this strategic plan, but we want to enhance it and bring it to current reality and context. So we're in the process of enhancing the strategic plan. We're not recreating it, we're enhancing it and growing it to reflect what the next 5 years will look like. This is the former plan, the one that will expire this year. And as you can see, there are 5 pillars in this plan. We have quality instruction and curriculum, we have partnerships, social emotional learning, we have stewardship, as well as equity. So in these 5-year plans, there was a list of activities that were listed under each plan of things that we wanted to do as we move forward. And I don't need you to spend a lot of time on all of those activities because I'm going to go into further detail about that in a moment. What we're interested in moving forward in is actually moving these 5 pillars into 4 pillars, with equity being the foundation. One of the things that I questioned when I came on board was why is equity a standalone? Why is equity not the DNA, the fabric of everything we do in every pillar that we do? And that is the foundation that we rest on. And so, we've been thinking through, how does equity live within the curriculum instruction pillar or quality instruction pillar? How does it live within social emotional learning, partnerships, and stewardship? So as we look through each of these pillars, I'm going to give you a highlight of what it is that we're moving toward. This is based on some of the feedback that I've received so far. I have a committee right now, about 40 members who are on my advisory council. And these members are members of the community who are representative across all organizations. We've got city leadership. I have all of our clubs, service clubs represented. I have community members, parents. I have all different types of demographics. I've got people representing different agencies and partnerships across the organization. And I also made sure that this particular advisory council was politically diverse as well. So we have conservative, and we have liberal, and we have everything in between on this committee, so that I have a really strong representation of the Anacortes community, and they're advising me in the redevelopment of some of these pillars. So when we look at curriculum and quality instruction and curriculum, the big tenets underneath this right now that we're examining and building out is what does our professional learning look like for our practitioners across the organization? What does the recruitment, placement, and retention look like for high quality staff? How are we providing and ensuring that our students have access, all students have access with common learning outcomes and assessments? That all students have access to the arts and career and technical education, and that our goals are to meet and exceed our state performance requirements, and that our students graduate for college, career, or life, and that we're not just focusing on getting kids who are interested in four-year college. That's important. We want that. I think we do a really good job, but we also want to think about how we're preparing our kids who choose other pathways and who are ready to be participants in an amazing democratic society. When we talk about partnerships and social emotional learning, those two pillars, we're looking at how are we enhancing our strategic relationships across our various partners within the community. That's with our service clubs. That's with our parent community. That's with our business community, and identifying ways in which we're creating two-way relationships, that we're not just the recipients of amazing donations or volunteer hours, which is incredible, but we're actually also providing opportunities for our students to provide access to our business community. We'll talk more about that, of what does work-based learning look like? How do we ensure that our kids can graduate if they choose not to go to college and actually have a certificate in their hand so that they can go work at the refinery, they can work at our hospital, they can work in any other industry that they want, and growing those programs. Looking at continuing to enhance meaningful and consistent communications for our internal and external stakeholders. That were, and I talked about this already, but partnerships to improve the quality and alignment of our college and career readiness. Systemic approach for student leadership and activities. Mr. Williams talked a little bit about that, of all of the activities and ways in which we're ensuring that all students have access to leadership growth, and that we're looking at a systemic approach to support students' social emotional learning. And I can talk more about that later. And then finally, our fourth pillar is stewardship, which is renewing the local levies to support our operations, technology, and safety. We will be, our board will be this month voting on a resolution to propose a levy to our community. That is a replacement levy. We're not actually going out to the community asking for more funding. We're asking for our community to renew the current taxes that they are paying so that we can ensure that we can continue to operate and provide effective technology and safety to our students. Our other goal in stewardship is to maintain a long-term facilities plan. We want to ensure that the taxpayers' dollars are put to good use, and that we're maintaining our roofs, we're maintaining our HVAC systems so that we have high quality air, especially during this COVID time, that we're improving our safety protocols, our safety, our fire alarm system, that we are just maintaining the actual, everybody who owns a house knows that if you're not maintaining the roof on a regular basis, you're going to have a leak at some point. And so what does that look like? And what is our cycle across our organization? We want to achieve clean audits. Our audits from the state, anytime we're audited on a regular basis, we want to make sure that they're clean and that we pass with flying colors. We want to engage our families and community in the budget development process. And we want to remove barriers specific to fees and transportation to support student participation in activities. That goes back to that social emotional learning. We want kids to have opportunities to be leaders in the school. And in order to be leaders to the school, some students need transportation, and some students cannot afford to pay the fees that they need to pay in order to participate. So we want to ensure that each and every child has access to those opportunities for their social emotional well-being. So here is a lot, and I don't want you to read all of this, but I'm doing this for a purpose. Our equity policy. We created an equity policy. This was created by community and staff engagement prior to my arrival. It was adopted the month before I was officially started on this job. And these are all of the areas on the equity policy. And it pretty much, the underlying tenet of this policy is that each child, I mean, really at the end of the day, the message is that every child, it is our goal for every child to be able to reach their fullest academic and social potential. It is our job to ensure that that happens, no matter what their race, economic status, disability, that we do everything possible to make sure that every child graduates on time and has a successful life beyond high school. So when you're looking at these 8 areas, I highlighted the key words here. And here are the key words in our equity policy. We're looking to engage families. We're looking to have system-wide decision-making processes to engage all of our constituents. We're looking to build and enhance a sense of belonging for our students and our staff. We're looking for the uniqueness of each child. We're looking to increase the ways in which we gather data on our students so we can make informed decisions about what to do and identify patterns and look at in ways in which there's disproportionality in our organization based on economic status, disability, or race. Looking at continuing to enhance our community partnerships, the ways in which we monitor our progress. Mr. Williams talked about feedback, and that's the way in which we can be successful. And your feedback, our students' feedback, our staff's feedback, and how we are monitoring that feedback and responding on a timely manner is important. That we have robust professional learning and we have a budget allocated to make that happen for our staff. That we intentionally work to counteract implicit bias. We know that human beings are inherently biased. It is our responsibility to understand that, and it is our job to make sure that we recognize when bias shows up. That we distribute our resources in a way that support each and every kid. That we recruit and hire and retain highly qualified staff that represent our community and the students within our community. And that we consistently review existing and new policies, procedures, programs, professional development, and curriculum materials to ensure that those policies and programs are working. So our equity policy is founded on these components, which are embedded into the 4 pillars that I talked about. So again, the goal is to not recreate the strategic plan. The committee that created that strategic plan did an excellent job, but we want to enhance it. One of the things that I noticed as I came on board is that a lot of these goals under the strategic plan could be revised to be a little bit more, many of them needed to be measurable. We needed to have measurable goals. And I didn't want to just have an activity that said we were going to do something by the end of 5 years and then that was considered met, that goal was met. I want to actually have a good, robust data system that actually measures how we're performing in each area. We're looking to revise those pillars to integrate the equity policy and again, to make sure that we have measurable outcomes. I just hired a new director of assessment, evaluation, and research. And part of his job is to ensure that we have robust data systems that are used to provide formative data, not just summative data. So much of schools are about the summative data. It's about the state testing that happens once a year and it's a snapshot in time. And often practitioners and organizations make decisions based on those summative data. And the way that I can best describe summative data is it's the autopsy. Once something is done, you examine what happened, and then you hope it doesn't happen to somebody else. That's the summative data. And most districts overly rely on summative data. What I want to make sure is that every aspect of our pillars, we have formative assessments that we are consistently looking at so that we can make adjustments along the way and reallocate resources along the way to ensure that when we get to the end product, we actually can predict with certainty how students will perform. The other area in which I'm focusing is the support for the board. So our school board, many people don't understand what a school board does. Now Barbara, I know you do because you were on the school board, but many people don't understand the boards. And if you've served on a board, it could be that you were on a working board, but a school board is different. And a school board's job is to manage the strategic plan, to build the goals and the KPOs of the strategic plan. Those are the key performance outcomes. In 5 years, what does the board want to see? And then their job is to supervise me and give me direction on where we need to go in relation to those 5-year goals, and that we meet regularly to grow and to plan. So if I were to look here, that is their work up here. They stay above that dotted line. Their job is to manage that aspect. They do not dip their toes down below that dotted line. The school board's job is to provide me, as the CEO basically of the organization, the opportunity to use my expertise as an educational leader and to work with my team to build the KPIs. Those are the key performance indicators. Those are the formative measures we're using from month to month, quarter to quarter, year by year, to ensure that we're reaching the 5-year goals that the board has set. And then I work with my department leads at the district office and the principals in the schools to ensure that we're measuring and creating plans to support that process along the way. And so we're working really hard as a superintendent and school board team to understand what our roles are and to ensure that we are working collectively as a highly effective team so that we can ensure together as a superintendent and school board that we have one of the best educational systems in this region. So here's an example of how the strategic plan is redeveloping. So here's strategic pillar number 1, quality instruction. And you can see on the left-hand side over there, the 5-year goals. And this is an example of just a snapshot of a huge document. Again, the board helps create those 5-year goals, and then they identify what the KPOs are. The board's goals is to stay in those 2 columns. Now they've given me direction on what those 2 columns are. Now it's my job to go to the teams and identify what the action plans are year to year. And how are we measuring it from year to year? And then at the end of the year, I report to the board what we were able to do. So our team has already for this year developed our action plans and our KPIs to help reach this 5-year goal, these 5-year goals that we're enhancing. So again, that's the board's role. This is the executive team's role. And we will be, again, working in a symbiotic relationship in a highly effective teaming environment to ensure that these 2 roles work together to actionalize this plan. You can see this plan is now posted online. The board adopted the plan last month, and you will see all of the action plans and KPIs under each area. So pillar number 1, quality instruction, is these are some of the areas in which we focus. So we're looking at, again, professional learning. We're looking at hands-on student-centered approach. We're looking at recruitment. We're looking at each student, regardless of race or categorical program, has equitable access to curriculum content. We're looking at each school and district meet or exceed federal state requirements. We want to make sure that every child, regardless of race and categorical program, and when I say categorical program, what I mean is students who qualify for English language learner supports, students who are in the advanced placement program, students who are receiving special education services. It's all students who are in a categorical program have equitable access to the curriculum, to the arts, and to career and technical education. And at the end of the day, each student graduates ready for life, college, or career. Partnerships, where again, we're looking at coherence and relationships. We're connecting with our internal and external stakeholders, and that we're building effective partnerships for college readiness. That we continue to develop a systemic approach for student leadership and activities, and that we're supporting student social emotional needs. And that, again, we renew those levies. We clean audits. These are, as you can see, there's a pattern here of everything that I've explained before. The goal, again, is that, and then each one of these has measurable goals to help us by the end of the year determine whether or not we're closer to reaching that 5-year goal. So now I'm going to switch a little bit and talk about some hot topics. You all have been seeing, how many of you have been watching and reading the national news? And just think to yourself right now, what are the hot topics in the national news about schools? Just think in your head right now, what are the top things that come to mind when you're reading the news or watching TV? All right, every single one of those is impacting us. We're talking about whether or not we should have our students vaccinated. We're talking about whether or not staff should be vaccinated. We're talking about quarantining, contact tracing, and everything to do with COVID. We're talking about masks in schools is a hot topic across the nation. We're also talking about race and equity and critical race theory in particular. And we're talking about sex ed and health. And there's a lot of misinformation about all of those topics. So my job today is to help you understand what it is we are doing and what it is we are not doing in Anacortes. And when these topics come up from community, I keep asking one question. Can you explain to me how this topic relates to the Anacortes community? And I want them to identify specifically a question they have about one of our schools or about one of our classrooms, and that I cannot address issues that's happening in Montana or in Missouri or in New York, or something you've read in the news. So what are we doing? We are not teaching critical race theory, but we are focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural competency. And the ways in which we're doing that is the policy that I shared with you. All of those key words in that policy that the board adopted. So we're supporting and supporting an inclusive environment, making sure that we have diverse offerings, that our students are seen, valued, and heard, and that our practitioners within the organization are competent and have practiced cultural humility in understanding the needs of our kids. Equity. A lot of people seem to think that if equity means that we rob from the poor to give to, we rob from the rich to give to the poor. It's this notion that if we focus our attention on our English language learners, or if we focus our attention on special education learners, that we're somehow taking away from the kids who are in the advanced placement programs, or we're taking away resources from other people. We are not taking away resources from anybody in the organization to give to other people. We are making sure that, again, related to our equity policy, that we are meeting the needs of each and every kid across the organization. Is equity teaching white kids to feel bad? This is the other narrative that's being spread in the national narrative and being spread locally. No, we are not. We are not teaching our white kids that they need to feel bad for being white, but what we are doing is making sure that our kids are reflected in our curriculum, that all kids are reflected, their racial background, their identities, their abilities, their cultural norms, and that people feel seen, valued, and heard in the curriculum and resources that we provide. And that we are teaching multiple perspectives and histories for our students. So what is it? What is equity? Again, equity is committed to the idea of continuous improvement so that each and every kid, high achievers, and those with differing abilities and backgrounds have the opportunity to attain the educational success they are capable of achieving. I don't think anybody can argue with that statement. Equity is doing everything possible to remove barriers for kids, making sure that they can have a rigorous learning environment, and that funding is allocated by the state and federal governments to help districts remove barriers and provide additional resources for students. So I want to go to this box over here, this graphic in the bottom right-hand corner. As you can see, there's a difference between equality and equity. Equality is giving everybody the same thing. And equity is making sure that everybody has what they need to get to that graduation pathway. So in this scenario, in this picture, we're not taking resources away from everybody. Those three boxes remain. The three boxes that are on the equality side remain. Every child has exactly what they need. In the equity side, we've added additional resources, and those additional resources typically come from the state or from the federal government to say, if a student qualifies for special education, there are additional resources that we are providing to the school district to support those kids. If a student is learning English as a second language or a third language or a fourth language, we will provide, the state has allocated funds. We're not taking funds away from other kids to give to those kids. And this is a narrative that I'm continuing to try to, I'm trying to get everybody in the community to understand that it's not taking away resources from anybody else. We are giving every child what they need. So through our policy, you can see all the ways in which we are helping kids reach their full academic potential. So here's the equity policy. I've gone over in detail the big topics in that equity policy. And the other ways in which we want to support and make sure that kids feel seen and valued and heard is that our curriculum, our teaching practices make sure that we think about mirrors and windows. So imagine that a mirror is a story that reflects your own culture and helps you build your identity. So I and my own cultural norms, my own cultural values are represented in the curriculum and in the instructional practices that I'm seeing each and every day. A window is a resource that offers you to view someone else's experience. So we want kids to not only experience their own identity, but we want students to be able to be exposed to other people's identities and cultures so that they can function well in a democratic, amazing society and work well with others and be able to have a successful career in life graduation. So again, mirrors should find them, so students should be able to find themselves, their families, and their communities reflected and valued. When students read books, access curricula, and other materials where they see characters, they should see characters like themselves who are valued in the world and they feel a sense of belonging. And the windows help students develop understandings about the wider world. Students learn about how other people conduct themselves in the world to understand how they might fit into that. So that's what our equity policy is about. When we talk about sense of belonging, we want kids to feel that they belong and that they know how to make other people feel belong or feel like they belong. So again, it's critical to understand that students cannot truly learn about themselves unless they learn about others as well. There is a law that you might have heard that has a lot of misinformation. So a new law, Senate Bill 5044, requires that students, that school staff, educators, and board members receive training on cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion. CCDI is not the same as critical race theory. And the assertion that critical race theory is being masked as CCDI is just insane. It's not. It's about us creating a safe environment for all students. And so we are committed to providing that professional development. I've talked about that. It's actually embedded in our equity policy that we provide robust professional development for our staff so that they can create a sense of belonging for each and every kid. So what is critical race theory? And we're not teaching it, but what is it? So critical race theory has recently gained local and national attention. It's an academic and legal term that has been around since the 1970s, generally discussed among researchers in higher education. CRT is an academic and legal framework or a lens of sort for examination of how race impacts society and systems. Critical race theory is not being taught in the Anacortes School District. We do not have a policy, class, a curriculum on critical race theory. However, we are doing cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, that is not the same as CRT. CRT takes a focus on a racial focus or racial lens. We are looking at cultural competency in all aspects. We want our students receiving special education services to be successful. We want our students who are learning multiple languages and English is their second language or third language to be successful. We want students who are experiencing poverty to be able to have access. We are looking at all aspects of the child and not just focusing on race, although race is a factor that we are talking about and making sure that kids are seen as well. So again, our work is about creating a safe environment for all students, and it is, and that CCDI is professional development for staff. It's not a curriculum. There's also a new Senate Bill 5395 that's about a comprehensive sexual health. And a lot of people are misinformed about this as well, and that they're assuming that we're teaching about sexuality in our schools, and we're not. The bill is based on is based on a bill, and there is no sexuality curriculum and content required for kindergarten through third graders. And there is no new sexuality curriculum content in 4th through 5th grade. So in grades K through 3, the bill requires social emotional learning. And at the end of the day, our K through 8 and actually our K-12 students are receiving a social emotional learning curriculum. Across every student in the Anacortes School District has access to social emotional learning and is taught by teachers in the schools. That meets the requirement of the bill. And that's about sense of belonging. That's about how do we take care of each other. That's about connecting with each other, understanding our emotions, being able to regulate our emotions, being able to be a community member, being able to work well collaboratively with others. Those are the things that we're teaching, and those are the standards that we are supposed to teach. In grades 4 through 5, this new bill requires that students get age-appropriate instruction that's focused on helping students understand and respect personal boundaries, develop healthy friendships, gain a basic understanding of human growth and development, and requiring HIV, STD instruction. The boundaries and healthy friendships is new and will be embedded in our social emotional learning and our KNOW curriculum, which is our health curriculum. The district adopted the KNOW curriculum already and has and will continue to cover the basic understanding of human growth and development. There's nothing new that we're adding to our system. Everything that we've taught about basic understanding of human growth and development is what we have been doing for years. So families should be aware and know about what it is we're doing regards to HIV, STD, and human growth and development instruction. And at the end of the day, every family member has access to that curriculum and can review it prior to the instruction and may, if they're uncomfortable, ask that their child be removed from the HIV, STD, and human growth and development units. So we have that option for all families. And then in grades 5 through 12, again, it's the HIV/AIDS prevention and human growth is available for parents for review. So what happens when there's a controversial issue in a classroom? We do have a policy for that. If we're going to bring in a guest speaker to talk about something that is outside of the adopted curriculum that the board has authorized, then it is in this policy, the teacher or the principal needs to inform parents that a guest speaker is coming in. So for example, if we wanted Planned Parenthood to come in and give a presentation to the class and it was going to be a controversial conversation, we know that the Planned Parenthood is a guest speaker. It's not necessarily connected to the curriculum. We would want to inform families of that and let them know what will be said and talked about. And then the parents have an option to remove their child from that classroom for that time period if it's going to be controversial. We also want to make sure that if there is a controversial topic that we provide multiple sides to that conversation and that the teachers are not giving their own personal political perspective and that the teachers are providing materials and access and allowing students to inform their own, to make their own informed decisions or make their own informed conclusions about what they're being, what they're reading and learning about. If there is a specific concern that happens, we've this year identified a specific chain of command process. So if a community member or a parent has a concern about what's happening in a classroom, they first need to talk to the teacher. And most of the time when the community member or a family member talks to a teacher, the issue is resolved. In the rare opportunity that it's not resolved, then they can go to the principal and the principal will help resolve the issue. And if it's not resolved at that point, then it would come to me. And then if it's not resolved at that point, it could go to the board. And so we've outlined that specific chain of command process to help provide clarity for our community that we value opportunities for kids to think about diverse topics. And that it is our job to ensure that our kids understand multiple perspectives. We are not here to teach them one way, and that it is our job to support critical thinking in our schools. So at the end of the day, you are a key communicator. And when all of these hot topics come up in the community, please ensure that our community, the Anacortes School District supports critical thinking. We believe that every child can be a critical thinker, and we are in the business of teaching children how to think critically, not what to think. And so that is is super important for us as we move forward, and that we should not know what a teacher's political perspectives are on this, or who they voted for in an election. It is our job to provide materials and resources for kids to think on their own. So with that, I'll open up. I've shared a lot with you. Are there any comments or questions? And I'm going to actually stop the screen so I can share. I can actually see everybody.
I'm going to unmute myself. What we can do here is you can unmute yourself by going to the bottom of your screen. There's a little microphone. You can press on that to unmute yourself. The reason we keep everyone muted is so that there's not a lot of background noise. You can also press on your the keyboard space bar, and that unmutes you as well. Hand raising, if you look at your screen here, you go to the word reactions, and when you click on that, you'll see a little hand. And when you put that, I'll do that right now, you'll see raise hand. You can see that in the corner there, and I can see you with doing that. And then you can click lower hand. So those are the two ways. That you can also ask questions in the chat box or make comments in there. And if you have any problems with your computer, let me know, and Brad can help you off screen so we don't spend time on that. I'm looking at, there's one question here. Is the slide available? Yes, there will be a YouTube video after that Reed is going to make, and that will be sent out. The link will be sent out to people to have if they want to look at the YouTube, or you want to send it to somebody who wasn't participating in this. It goes to all of our members who are on our mailing list, and if anyone wants it, they can certainly contact me. It'll happen. Brad sends it off to Rita now, and Rita will put it together. So it'll be available in a few days. So anyway, why don't we see if anyone, I'm looking here on the screen. If I don't see you, I apologize in advance. If you would like to raise your hand and ask Dr. Irish some questions, there is the opportunity to do that. Okay, I see Rosemary Stevens.
Yes,
Rosemary, unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. Am I not?
Okay, good. Yes.
I'm a retired teacher. I taught for 30 years in the Huntington Beach district in California. And I would like to say how impressed I am by both of you gentlemen. And the outline that you gave, I think, is very helpful to teachers because it gives you guidelines. And I want to congratulate you and wish you the very best, and tell you that the community's behind you, and let us know if there's any way we can be of help. Thank you again.
Thank you, Rosemary. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Barbara?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, thanks. It's
Yeah.
Carolyn Moulton. Sorry, I didn't find my raise hand icon in my reactions. But I just wanted to say thank you so much, Dr. Irish. It was a fantastic presentation, very clear, just great information. And I'm wondering if that PowerPoint is available. I think it would be a great reference to have and to be able to share with people.
Absolutely. I can send it to Barbara, and then she can make that available on to you all. Absolutely.
Great, thanks. It just, hearing you speak makes me excited for the future of our kids and for our educational system. And I'm really glad you're at the helm. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions here? Sometimes one of my, not a question is, I hope that you'll be able to reach out if there are issues or concerns as of community members can participate if you need support, or if you need help with explaining things about what's going on at school board meetings or other meetings that have, and I don't think they've become contentious here yet, but they certainly have been very contentious throughout the country with people, you know, behaving in ways that's not really acceptable, to the point where school board members have quit, being fearful for their safety and their safety of their families. So if we can help in any way, you please feel free to contact me and I can send out the word. Equity has become a charged word, and I like the way you explained it, so thank you. So we know what that actually can mean. And the other thing about critical race theory is that even though it's become very negative, it isn't terrible that students learn about the basis of a lot of the things in this country, about slavery, about Indian genocide. You don't have to feel bad about facts. And that I hope that we're able to teach facts without putting them into a charged situation. You know, these are facts and you need to learn facts. I think that would be, we can move along in that direction. And I hope we are as a district, without all the negative, you know, that my kid is going to feel bad. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes.
Okay, I do not see any other hands, but that doesn't mean they're not there. So if I am missing somebody, please feel free to just jump in right now, because I'm having some angst with my computer. I take full responsibility, but anyway. Okay, is there anything that anyone would like to ask or comment about with Dr. Irish? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, oh,
but
looks like
Barbara,
Hi, Balit.
I have a brief question for Dr. Irish. And again, I want to thank you very much for joining us and for the fine presentation you made. I'm just curious if you had any pushback from the community basis all of these critical points that you highlighted to us, which are really nationwide. They're being discussed and pushed up, so to speak. I'm just curious what the reaction has been. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, I have certainly had many conversations with groups or individuals, and people have definitely been concerned. And I find that at the end of the conversations, once we can clear up what the misinformation is, I think most people have walked away with a better understanding and find the support. I think one of the things, the other talking point that I'm realizing is charged right now is this idea of equitable outcomes, which we use quite a bit, that we want to create equitable outcomes for kids in our system. And what that means is that we have opportunities for kids to be able to pursue multiple pathways and to have barriers removed along the way so they can reach their individual goals. And I think a lot of people assume that equitable outcomes means that every kid is going to get the same grade at the end, or that every kid is going to be treated the same way at the end. And that would be not an equitable outcome, that would be an equal outcome. And so I think there is this, people are confused between equity and equality, and trying to teach that to individuals and groups, I think is really needed in this community. One of the ways in which I've been framing it that I think has been helpful for most is this idea that if we want to have the outcome be that every kid graduate, and everybody has different needs for their, for let's say every child needs eyeglasses or needs support with eyeglasses. And if we were to give every child the same eyeglass prescription, then we would then that would be the equal approach. That would be giving every kid the same thing, and they would have the same prescription whether they need it or not. So student A, who doesn't even need eyeglasses, is going to have to wear them. Student B, who's farsighted, is wearing the wrong prescription. Students who's nearsighted is wearing the right prescription, and then a student with astigmatism is just not getting any support. And so that once I can explain to community that the equal approach or an equal outcome is that we're giving every kid the same pathway with the same glasses, that just doesn't make sense. But once I explain that we give kids the prescriptions they need to be successful, to walk across that graduation line, that is our duty as educators. I think most people walk away from those conversations feeling better. So it has been really controversial. I've had a lot of people reach out to me with concerns. I've spent a lot of hours and days engaged in these conversations with people. One thing that I'm really proud of in the Anacortes community is people are civil, people are courteous, and they want to engage. And for that, I'm grateful. And so there's been very few people who have been rude in this process.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to either ask Dr. Irish a question or make a comment before we move on to end the meeting? All right, well, if there is, I'm not seeing it. So let us, thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for coming to this meeting, clarifying a lot of stuff. It helps me when I have to answer questions that people ask me as well and explain. And I hope it's helped everyone who's participated today to understand a little bit more about what's going on, and that they can reach out to you if they have questions. Thank Brad, as always. That's who's our computer guy who makes these meetings happen. Without him, we wouldn't have it happened. And I see here from Kathleen Finks to everyone, don't give up, stay here. Okay, good, thank you. And thank you, Rita, in advance for doing the YouTube, which will have the slides in it and the presentation with Dr. Irish and also Mr. Williams. And thank you all for being here and spending this evening, part of the evening with me. I will stay on a little bit afterwards if anyone wants to stick around and chat. You don't have to run away. I know Dr. Irish probably does because he has a lot to do. And so again, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful to make new friends and meet people, and great to see old friends who are on this call as well. So thank you. Feel free to call or reach out to me, email, or stop me on the street when you see me. I am here to serve and support, and I'm grateful for each of you. And again, my door is open to anybody. So thank you. Thank you for the support.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. I'm going to clap out loud, so thank you so much.
All right. See everybody.
Okay, good evening. Okay. Anyone, like I said, who would like to talk, please feel free. I'm going to stick around, or if you